Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar today called How to Be a Future CEO. Thanks for waiting on the line for a little bit. We were getting things ready and allowing for more people to join us. We've got a great number of folks here, and we're super excited to share with you some learnings about how to be a future CEO, as well as the CEO for 1 Month program. So my name is Sharina Hatta. I'm the global head of the CEO for 1 Month program. And I am so excited that we've got two of our alumni with us today, actually. One is Ed Broadhead, who is the UK and global CEO for 1 Month in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Correct.
That's right. And Lisa, who you see there as well, who was our Germany and CEO for 1 Month for 2018. So they've been alumni now for a couple of years. Both are working at Adecco, and I thought it'd be really interesting to see kind of how their career has progressed since they've been CEO for 1 month. Now, a couple of guides right now for you. You'll notice that you are on mute. That's purely to help with the audio and the streaming, as we're all streaming online these days. But of course, we do want you to ask your questions to the alums that we have here. Anything you want about the program experience, how to get involved, what you'll learn from it. All you need to do is head to our questions box. You'll see that on the right side of your screen or on the bottom panel if you're on your mobile or tablet. Type in your question at any point in time and I'll pick them up and shoot them to the right person, Ed or Lisa. So this is how we're gonna go. This webinar is being recorded as well. You probably heard that at the beginning. And anybody that is listening right now or has registered will receive a copy of it and we'll make it available for you to listen to again as well. Now, I've said enough and I want to move it on to the two alums that we have here right now, Ed and Lisa. So, brains before beauty or the other way around, or whoever wants to go first?
The question is what that means.
It doesn't mean anything. But listen, Lisa, why don't we start with you first on this, right?
Okay.
Thinking about how you started as a CEO for 1 month, tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming the global CEO for 1 month.
Sure. So when I applied for the program, I was in the middle of my gap year, not really knowing what to do after my bachelor's degree. And thanks to a mentor from a former working student job, I got to know the program, applied, and then went through the horrific journey of assessments, which sounds really, really hard and not so much fun, but actually at the end it was a lot of fun. So I enjoyed the journey. It kicked off with an assessment center in Germany after sending in a video of like answering 2 questions about the future of work, and then an assessment in Germany, which took place in our headquarters in Düsseldorf, where I met a group of 15 incredible people. A few of them actually are back with us now. So Lars, for example, he was part of the top 15. He's working at Modis, and Chiara Vogel, she was with an NGO, a small startup, and will join us soon, also from that cohort. So it was an amazing day. And afterwards, obviously, I got to work with Peter Blasch, which was a lot of fun, our Germany CEO for the Adecco group. And then I went through the global assessment, so a lot of challenges, 7 and 1 innovation challenge, I think it was. So we had to think analytically, we had to train our emotional intelligence, we had to assess the situation that we're in during the country month, and then we went to the global bootcamp. But I bet, Ed, you remember the global bootcamp as well as I do. Maybe you share your bootcamp experience, the global one. Since I covered the nationwide assessment, so we can share the insights here.
Yeah, so for the global boot camp, so as Lisa described, once they'd funneled down to the 50 country ones, then we had, I think it was 10 of us that were flown or trained in May to Paris, where we had 3 days of intensive individual and group exercises. For those that know the program, The Apprentice, quite similar to that, where you're often in teams completing challenges, or you're interviewed as individuals. After the first day, whittling down from 10 to 5, and then 5 down to a few that would then be interviewed, culminating an interview with Alanda as the global CEO of the group themselves before a final selection was made. So it was a pretty exhausting few days of assessment we were constantly on.
And I'm guessing that doesn't even compare to then having the full month with the CEO after that, if you were to compare those two things.
Yeah, different, of course, but both were very tiring. I was given some advice before starting the month. I don't know, Lisa, if you got the same advice of, make sure that you find time for downtime during that month, during the weekends, because especially if you're not used to it, it is exhausting. And some people like to say, you're young, you can handle it. No, I don't think that's true at all. I think you have to train yourself to be, moving through multiple time zones and things like that in such an intense way. So no, it's definitely an exhausting month.
Yeah, actually, so my bootcamp took place in London, so it's always where, like in the headquarters, where the former CEO, global CEO format comes from. So 2016, I think Camille came from France, so Ed went to Paris. Since Ed is from the UK, I went to London, and I can only completely second that. And I think Ed, it was you were there, right? It was the investor days during our bootcamp, so you were there in the final minute. And once the announcement was done, it was kind of the first thing you told me, like, get some rest, right? Take your time, get some rest, get some sleep, then package your suitcase, but make sure you're well rested, because it is more physically exhausting than you would think it is. And your brain just has so much to process. So it really becomes, a habit to enjoy downtime and really have downtime in between.
So here's a question for you then. Obviously, we've titled this webinar, How to Be a Future CEO. And both of you have had a chance to shadow not just one CEO, but two CEOs, your country manager, as well as the global CEO, right? So you've had pretty interesting to think that you've had 2 one-month internships with CEOs. From what you've observed and being in that position, what would you say are some of the things that a person would need in order to become a CEO? Some of those skills that you've seen that have really stood out to you. Maybe Ed, if you want to jump in first.
Me to jump in first?
Yeah.
Okay, so as a CEO, you're leading, right, the company, right? So you can speak about those types of skills and that skill set in the context of what great leadership skills include, which includes CEOs, but anyone can be a leader at any part of the organization. I think it means, therefore, like 3 particular parts of those of leadership are 3 really important skills to have as a leader. One, you have to have a lot of integrity. You have to lead from the front, set example, make decisions, and be transparent about how you've made those decisions, and have a lot of humility also as you navigate through that. You got to know that and understand you won't have all the answers, right? And other people need to understand that you won't have all the answers as well. So I think that's part of the key point of needing to have integrity. The second is communication skills. I remember coming in to the experience, but then also into the workplace after leaving university, thinking, I was a reasonable communicator, but there's a whole other level of skill to that. And the knack really is being able to take pretty complex topics and really distill that into really simple things for people to understand and immediately get it. That you can helicopter easily from the detail into a kind of wider strategic view. So that'd be, I think, a second one, so communication. And then third, how you're able to invest and nurture your team, like to really understand that you are nothing without your team as a leader, that you really listen to them, you really understand that, you know, you're not responsible for doing the work, you're responsible for people who do the work. And often as the CEO for a large company, you're responsible for the person who's responsible for the person who's responsible for doing the work. So doing everything that you can to make their life as frictionless as possible, whilst giving them direction on why we're doing things and the big sort of how we might do it, but really empowering the team that you have the privilege of leading, would probably be the third major skill as part of leadership in general. Lisa, what would you? Sure, you've got lots to add to that.
Yeah, it's really just adding because I made the same experience. I would probably add something that you mentioned already or touched base on is a super high level of self-awareness. Because obviously how to become a CEO or future CEO sounds really flashy, but along the way, there will be a lot of challenges that can either take you down or take you to enormous heights. And you will have to understand yourself a lot better, like on a day-to-day basis, because everything that's Ed just mentioned, even being humble, remains in understanding your own values, roots, what you want to achieve, and how you want to achieve it. So if you want to become a great future CEO and not just some CEO, I believe that this level of self-awareness is becoming more important, especially as we're navigating through so much ambiguity and uncertainty. The like VUCA world is in like the next big buzzword. So it really comes down to you being self-aware and practicing it on a day-to-day basis. So what do I enjoy? What is it that energizes me? Because maybe along the way of becoming a great future CEO, you will recognize, okay, my energy lies in something else, and I will become the next great CHRO because it's more of your interest. So I believe that is really important. Leading your team, you need to have self-awareness. So that's a big one that I would add. And in addition, obviously, since it's the chief executive officer, you need to understand the business that you're working in. So having a hands-on approach and helicoptering the different levels, not only communication-wise, but also understanding-wise, sometimes relating back to where do we need to improve and where are opportunities, because understanding the business, I believe, is important to future-proof it, to change it. So if you don't know where you're at the moment, how to improve it for the next step and the next level, and how to use digital technologies to amplify it and to enable it. So really knowing your value at the moment and where you want to develop the value to in the next step is probably the next big skill. It's not really like understanding the business board or business sense, probably. That I think is a better wording, because it's not always understanding every detail of your business, but having the business sense. Where we are good at, what is the value that we have, and how do we want to shape it for the future.
Nice. These are some great things. I love that. I'm just taking them down: integrity, communication skills, the investing and nurturing in your team, increasingly high levels of self-awareness, and obviously having the business sense as well. I think those are just, if I just sum that up, those are the 5 that I kind of took away from this particular conversation. I want to switch it now to obviously your month as a CEO, as a global CEO for 1 month. Let's start it at that level. So this is when you're shadowing Alana Hutz, right, the global CEO. What surprised you about yourself, or what was the most surprising thing about that experience for you if you think back upon it? I know a lot of it was new. You realized that you needed to make sure you had yourself physically healthy as well, as not just mentally there, but physically healthy was an important part of it. But what else, or what was the one most surprising thing for you during that time?
Go for it, Lisa.
Thanks, Ed. That's a difficult one because Ed and I had to hand in a report about all our astonishments at the end of the month and sharing back to Alain what astonished us the most, but obviously closely related to the business at that time and the teams that we've met and our observations. But what surprised me the most, probably for me, and it sounds so trivial, and we've read it in 10,000 important LinkedIn or Medium articles, but is the level of empathy and authenticity the leadership team has, and how important it is to really listen to your organization. Because it's like the Adecco Group is enormously big, and it's a Fortune 500 company, and we have impact on what we do. So each individual in each branch around the world, every person is making or having an impact. And listening to the different voices of your group globally in the different functions is something that I really like. It surprised me, right? We went on business reviews. And whenever there was time, Alain took time to talk about somebody's kid going to that university in the States, making it in or not, and remembering all the details about the individuals that are making the impact on a day-to-day basis in their specific country, in their specific brand, and just like having that feeling and sense for the organization based on empathy and authenticity is something that really surprised me. And I didn't, I was expecting something more corporate and dusty and less human driven than that. How about you?
How about you, Ed?
Now you got some time to think it through.
I mean, but actually the first thing that had come to mind was the fact that when you're in this room of people, right, and the CEO is trying to make decisions, right, you're relying on that team, right, and that bond between a group of people and the ability to listen to the debate and then decide together. And surprising that it wasn't all that different in terms of what you then relied on and the human nature in those rooms compared to other teams at other levels of the organization, and the importance of keeping core, the ability to listen and engage proactively with that team kind of around you, to treat them as human beings, was somehow when you look back, it shouldn't be surprising, but it was, right? And you think, okay, yes, top level executive decision, the CEO must come in and say, this is what we're doing, blah, blah. People listen and this kind of thing, but it's not really like that. It's people are appreciated for what they bring to the table, the voice they bring to the table, and that authenticity being required all the way up to the top levels of the organization.
That's really nice to hear as well. And I think, I'd love to hear also from you. So after the CEO for 1 month program, what happened next? Because obviously both of you are now with the Adecco Group in some way or form. So it'd be interesting to hear. We've got a couple of questions asking right now actually about, what are you currently working on? And so number one, what are you currently working on? 2, what was the journey coming into the role that you're in now after CEO for 1 month? And 3 is, how did that experience help you in your current work? So the 3 questions. Ed, we'll start with you this time.
Okay. So now in the organization, I work in the digital part of the organization, and I work on what we call the data products. So I globally manage the deployment and rollout for our data platforms that enable the Adecco Group to understand the labor market, what companies need to hire, what people are available with those types of skills, and the product that is all about how we match an individual opportunity to a job. So that's part of the digital organization, and specifically the digital product organization, really linked to what we're doing with artificial intelligence at the company. Journey to get there. Through the CF 1 month experience, Alan and I talked a lot about how data was being used at the company and the opportunity to have data and then AI impact how it would impact the Adecco Group. And when I finished the CF 1 month experience, I was given the opportunity to come to Zurich and take a kind of first consolidated look at the data analytics strategy for the company, and then ran a internal startup for the Adecco Group as well, where we were selling data products externally to governments as well as to other actors inside the group. And then when we decided to invest more in that type of activity and scale it up, that led to sort of where I am now, helping the group scale those capabilities. The one thing that's been really kind of critical to the job now is understanding how decisions are made generally in the organization, understanding how governance happens, not at Adecco, but then generally, and how important it is to understand those decision-making processes at a company, because that helps you understand how you need to navigate an organization in order to drive forward your initiative, drive forward your agenda. So the CF 1 month experience really helped establish knowledge of the company, but also how decisions were made, what the culture was like, and who individuals were that would be relevant to get to know. Also in the context of what the whole Adecco Group business was about and where we'd be trying to go. So that really helped now in my job be able to articulate to senior management well what we're doing, why it's going to help them, why they should get on board, and what benefits they can expect.
Nice. And Lisa, what about you? You joined us as well after the CEO for 1 month experience.
Yeah, I took a slightly different approach because I was in my gap year between bachelor's and master's. So I knew I wanted to continue my academic education and found a really cool degree, which is combining work and studying at the same time. So it's digital transformation and sustainability combined in one degree, which I'm finishing off just in those upcoming months, hopefully, so keep your fingers crossed. So I started working kind of part-time, which quickly became very much full-time in project management, looking at how we at Modus is our IT and engineering consultancy arm of the Adecco Group, so really focusing on developing solutions together with our clients and all sorts of technical areas. So really focusing on how we can retain our employees on a day-to-day basis. And I did a wonderful analysis, tried to gather a lot of data. Ed would have been really proud. Did my best. It was a lot of qualitative data, so less quantitative, and trying to improve then based on that qualitative data analysis. We did 90 exit interviews with detailed questions. And it was actually my innovation project, right? So we had to hand in an innovation project as our final challenge of the Global CEO for a Month Bootcamp or campaign. And it was my innovation project, how we can innovate processes in retention, especially within Modus. So I started to work on that for a year and a bit. And since I always had a passion for how to do things differently and thinking outside the box and maybe taking approaches that were not so common yet, I joined a team which is called Disruptive Innovation and Design. And it already sounds really fancy. And what we do is we try to bring method to the madness of this world by processes and tools that you can use to become innovative. either in a long-term process or a more short-term process in the sprint approach. So we started to develop that area and the offering that we have for our clients, because in Germany, some of you are listening from Germany, we have some hidden champions and SMEs, so small, medium companies that have the highest ability in engineering, but how to change, how to go for a new approach is really difficult. So we started that journey to help them with our approach, like Method to Your Madness, a year back, and now I'm leading this specific team. We've been growing from 3 to now nearly 25 people working on really cool projects. And I learned a lot within CEO for 1 month. As said, it's a lot about communicating and governance and building trust, because we're so digital these days. And if you want to help companies change, you need a lot of trust. And how to build that trust, and how to use exactly empathy and authenticity to get that trust from your clients, but also from your employees and your team. Because sometimes you're taking them on a journey which is still open-ended, right? You're building a team, you're building a service which was never tested before, maybe. So you always need to find, the relationship to build trust on. And that's something that I certainly saw a lot within the month of CEO for 1 month, how to build trust and how to build enduring relationships and how to maintain them and really build on those relationships. So today I'm still practicing it, working on it, but I think it was the perfect start, actually, and also the communication, obviously, with C-level, because change and innovation is usually something that requires some buy-in from different stakeholders. And that's something that I certainly learned within the month, like at least how to approach and which tone to use in specific settings. So that was really, really helpful.
And that's interesting. There's a quite number, I think both of you have alluded to it, and something that we also have seen some of the research that we do, that communication really is one of the largest pieces, qualities and skills that any leader needs, right? And it's communication at various different levels, like you said, Lisa, sort of at the C level for the buy-in, but also when you're looking at people who are actually doing the work on the ground, to be able to create that sort of trust and empathy with them as well. So being able to, as I mentioned, helicopter from top down and then back up again with those different methods, ways of doing it, is one of the qualities that is so key when it comes to leadership in any shape or form. We've got a lot of questions that have come in.
Awesome.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bundle a couple of them together, because they are around similar themes. So, if I haven't specifically said your name or your question, I hope that I'll have the chance to kind of bundle them in to some of these. Some are interesting questions that I think we'll have interesting answers for from your experiences. And others are things that I think are just more process oriented, which I can also help answer as well. So the first question we'll start at the beginning is around, why did you apply for the program? Ed, over to you first.
To me first, my goodness. Okay, so I have always been interested in senior leadership. I remember telling my, I was at university, I was planning to go and work for Shell, the energy company. And I remember telling my tutor at university that I'd love to be in the senior leadership of Shell maybe one day, and he couldn't possibly understand why. But this idea, right, that you could be at the forefront of a company that has great potential to really impact how people live and work, right? And to be in a position where your decisions can affect the lives of millions, if not hundreds of millions, and in some of these big companies, billions of people. So it would be fascinating to understand what the life of those people is like. And sure, you can, there are opportunities to listen to podcasts and this kind of thing, but to actually live that experience, I'd never seen anything like that type of opportunity before. I still believe it's incredibly unique. So for that reason, it was an absolute no-brainer to throw my hat into the ring with very little expectation of getting anywhere. But yeah, I just saw it as the most authentic opportunity to experience what I dreamed maybe my future career would look like at the time. So yes, for that reason.
And Ed, what were you studying when you were at university?
I was engineering. So I'm an engineer by trade.
That answers a question that just came in from an engineering student who asked whether this would be the right kind of place for them to try it out.
So yes, as an engineer, follow-up question, I did energy-based things. So I did a lot of mechanical and large AC power, nuclear engineering as well.
And now doing the data analytics and all the AI things that for us.
Yeah, I didn't actually do info engineering at university. The course at I studied at Cambridge, and the course there is had far too much maths in the AI track for my liking. So I didn't choose that one at the time, but I have found my way there a couple of years later.
And part of it is just grabbing the opportunities that come up while they do and giving it a go and trying it out and seeing what is possible, because there's a world of opportunity out there to try things, even more than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had nothing to lose apart from a couple of hours of filling out an application, which does seem like a lot when you're studying for finals, but
Fair enough, yeah.
but you know, it wasn't. I knew the chances were pretty slim, but yeah, there was so much potentially to gain as well.
And Lisa, what about you? Why did you apply for the program?
Oh, I mean, I would love to have such a wonderful answer as Ed has, but actually I just tried it, right? I was in the middle of my gap year. I just finished an internship. I was in the middle of two things. I received that link from the former colleague who said, hey, this might be something for you. So I just signed up, and I was like hoping to get maybe a reply. So I was just like, okay, it was really easy. I don't know, Ed, your first application was maybe longer than mine was. I just had to submit a CV. So the entry barrier was really low. And I just jumped on it. And then I became suddenly part of the program. And I received lots of communication, add-ons, how I could learn, and then I made it into the top 150. And I was like, okay, this is actually a big thing, right? They want me to submit a video now. I've never recorded a video of myself. Back in the days, I wasn't that active on Instagram at all. So I kind of became invested in it. I was like, okay, now like I need to record myself. I need to get in front of a camera. I still have the same phone, by the way. So it wasn't a great one back then, and now even less. So it was like, okay, how do I do this? And I just loved the process. And then going to meet the team, I wasn't even expecting that on the day they would make the decision. I was going there to Düsseldorf for the assessment day in Germany, to then go home and then get a feedback in 2 weeks. So when they then did the announcement, I was completely shocked. I was like, oh, okay. I was really just going with the flow, and obviously preparing for the assessment, we had to prepare some topics, and I was just going with the flow. So I did not really had those aspirations in 2018. Now I would say I do have a little bit more of aspiration to go for a C level or senior leadership role, just because once you see what you can do and the impact, exactly as Ed said, you could have, it's just fascinating, right? And we can do so much as this generation to change the world for good. I mean, in the center of my studies are the SDGs, and one big part that companies and corporations these days are missing out is social sustainability. And the Adecco Group, with what it does, has and can have such an important footprint on especially that area. So when I got into the program, got to know the Adecco Group a bit more, because I wasn't an expert in that area before, I just felt like, okay, I want to pursue this. I want to get as far as I can and learn as much as I can, because the opportunity for impact is just so big and so unique to learn and get that insight. Yeah, so I started going with the flow and then became more driven, let's say. Like
more invested as time went along.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense
Exactly.
because it ups the ante, so to speak, right? There's more at stake as you go further up in that process. I think a couple of process questions here that are coming in more along the lines of that I'll just answer. A question of how old, or is there an age limit or age threshold you must be at in order to apply? And our answer generally is no. I mean, the program is for those who are, you know, roughly in their last 2 years of university, have just started work, gaining the work experience. It's about helping you get that first bit of work experience. To give you an example, last year, one of our final 10 was a Brazilian girl who was 19 years old. So, you know, still super young, not with your traditional background as well. Very inspiring girl, because there was another question about, do you have to be a college graduate to be in this as well? Answer is no, actually, you don't have to be. We're looking for anybody who's interested in leveling up their skills, in understanding a bit about more themselves as well, about how to get into the workforce. Because the other thing that I wanted to mention also is, you know, as Anne and Lisa had mentioned, the odds seem to be pretty slim. There's a lot of people that apply for this, and you're looking at around 30 to 35 positions across the world, as that's how many people, how many participating countries we have at the moment. And you'll be able to shadow that person. I think what we wanted to do on the program side is to ensure that, you know, as soon as when you join the program, that we provide you some sort of value to understand yourself a little bit better and understand how that goes along. And you'll see that in the next round when you hit the assessment phase, where we'll be sending out, you know, we'll be sending out assessments to you to take, and that is partly for us to be able to help assess, but also provides you a feedback report so that you understand places where you can thrive, where you can also improve, and how to take that on. So I think that's also one of our commitments that we have, is to help you continue in that journey, regardless of what the outcome is. And I wanted to put that out there as well. Some questions for Ed and Lisa is, there's this phenomenon called the imposter syndrome in a way, right?
Yeah.
And we all have it. Even as we grow older, I will admit, even as you grow older and you go into a new job, there's always this little feeling of like, oh, am I really good enough for this? And I can only imagine, being the very self-aware and humble people that you are as well, that as you get into that CEO for 1 month role, that sometimes can play in your head. And that's a question that's come in many, many times, is how do you do it as like a 20-some-year-old shadowing your CEO who's had all that much experience? How do you ensure that you can get your voice heard, or that you do it in a way that is meaningful as well?
Lisa.
You go first.
Me first. Okay. Yeah, for sure. You'll get a sense of imposter syndrome. That's undoubtable, right? How do you know that, right? Because you have met and spent days in the global bootcamp with some outstanding individuals, and you know of many throughout the process, right? And that you've met and spent time with that that you know are really, really strong, right? So you will think, yeah, why me? You have to accept at some point that you did get chosen, right? And you're now there, right? And they're not silly people that made that choice, and they did see something in you, and to take some confidence in that. They equally understand, you know, what you were there to do. You're there in a room to provide a fresh perspective. You're there to ask questions that maybe they wouldn't have all the time. Sometimes ask simple but difficult questions, and to learn, and to learn. You're not there and expected to understand the business, make decisions, and be the smartest person in the room. And if you do think that, then things won't go very well for you. But most people who, but by that point, I think you've realised you're not there to have that type of attitude. So yeah, at some point you've got to realize that they chose you, they believe in you, have confidence in yourself, show up, enjoy it, have fun, take the opportunity for all that it's worth, realize that you're there to learn and to challenge, but there's not an expectation on you to solve all the problems in the room. And yeah, you've got 4 or 5 weeks, so try not to doubt yourself and milk the experience for everything that you can.
And Lisa, perhaps sort of a little tangent off of that question, is this whole idea of reverse mentorship. And Alain talks about this a lot as well, our global CEO. He talks about the reverse mentorship as well. He obviously is a massive champion of this program. It wouldn't happen without his patronage, I guess, so to speak. And he does it because, honestly, it's a way to bring young people into an organization, flip things up a little bit, cause a little bit of disruption, and to get a fresh perspective. What do you say about that? And how was your time with Alain on the reverse mentorship side when you think about that?
I mean, every day is reverse mentoring in the program. So what Ed just said, you're there to bring in the fresh perspective. So really help senior leadership understand the needs of the generation and be closer to some of the trends that we observe. And obviously, I mean, the imposter syndrome, just quickly going back to that, it also comes, it comes once when you are in the process of becoming it, then you are CEO for a month, even in your country. And there will be people that have been before you, right? And they've done an amazing job and left an imprint on the group on a local level. And then you go to the global level, and then there have been people before you like Ed, who are just outstanding and fun to work with and just impressive. So you need to, at some point, acknowledge not only that you've been chosen, but that the difference between you is what you bring at the end to the group. So even if I'm obviously like hair-wise and stuff, I'm not exactly Ed, but I can bring insights to the group that that are unique to what I do and to my perspective of the world and to what I feel is the truth. So every year people will get chosen for different reasons. Obviously because of their skill set, but then because of different qualities that they could bring to the group and insights. So that's something to accept, right? That we're different. So even if you're trying to be the best person possible, you can certainly learn from great leaders, but you will always need to define your own leadership style and your own true self at the end that you will bring to the table. And then that's a hard process, by the way. It's not easy. Still working on it to define that. Like, what is it that's my value proposition that I bring to the group in a specific way? But then also reverse mentorship wise, it's not only about generations, but for me, it was also a lot about the diversity part of it, because most of those rooms that you get into are still heavily men dominated or not yet completely diverse when it solely comes to gender. We're not even talking about your ethical background or the studies that you've been taking, right? I mean, Ed is rare because he has this data engineering insight now, but came from mechanical engineering, is working for an HR company. So he's bringing diversity to the skill set that we need. I'm bringing a little bit of a different background, but also a different perspective to the C-level room as a woman. So it's really about bringing, something new into that room and holding up for it and just making sure that it's always acknowledged and that you're highlighting it, right? What's important to you. So if you have something that you really want to contribute, an insight, this passion, a specific superpower, take it to the C-level and make it seen. So don't be shy, right? If you have some specific qualities, just take them and make them seen and make sure that they're represented on the C-level. And I will not leave you. I will just switch seats quickly because my charger does not work. So I will be back with camera in a sec, and the next question has to go to Ed. But I will be right back with you in a sec.
Right.
All right. So Lisa's gonna grab her charger. And a question for you, something we had discussed a little bit, but actually a question, it also came in on the from our audience members today, is what was potentially a scary moment for you as a CEO for 1 month? Did you have many of those? What would you really be willing to share with us?
Yeah, definitely several experiences where you felt very much thrown in the deep end. So a couple. I started with one. I mean, my first day or first 2 days as global CFO month were the Capital Markets Day. So this is a biannual, so every 2-year event usually that the senior leaders, so the executive committee, hold and they host for the investors in the Adecco Group. So where they basically pitch and show off what the Adecco Group is capable of, what the strategy is, in order to convince those investors to purchase Adecco Group shares. So it's Capital Markets Day. So this is my first day. Not knowing much about the company at all and this kind of thing, and I'm told, okay, great, you're going to be on stage. You've got a few hours to prepare. We're going to ask you some questions, and in the room will be Credit Suisse, UBS, JP Morgan, etc. And if you say something wrong, the stock price will go down. So that was day one. So that was quite terrifying for the first day. But I say that, and the person I was on stage with, which is the now the chief of staff, Stefan Hauig, was sort of very reassuring, and tried to make it into a fun and relaxed affair. But you couldn't help but think, when you're seeing Alan and the CFO agonize intensely over what they would be saying and doing on stage, that you couldn't feel a little bit intimidated by that experience.
So did the share prices go down the day after on that one, Ed?
I think it actually went up a little bit. I don't take credit for that at all. And it swiftly went down when I joined the company for the time.
But it's an example of sort of the trust that is put into the CEO for 1 month.
Huge. Yeah, it's huge. I mean, massive trust. I mean, that they really put their they walk the talk when they say that they're going to put you in these positions, right? And I was fortunate enough, equally, to be on panels with presidents, literally the president of Colombia, having breakfast with him and Alan, speaking and meeting with clients as well, speaking on the BBC Today program as well, so in the media, high profile kind of media, where you are speaking on behalf of the company. You're well briefed, of course, but you're still there to do the final mile. And a lot of trust that's put in us, which is very humbling, indeed, for sure.
I realize this has been a great conversation, and I've learned a lot of new things from you guys as well, things that I didn't know about what you had to do in some of the points. So this has been such an eye-opener. We've had a lot of good comments from the audience members as well, and I hope we've been able to answer some of those questions with the remarks that have been made. I realize with 5 minutes to go, I wanted to address a question about what this year's CEO for 1 month program looks like, especially as well, given that last year everything had to go online because of COVID. So what actually happens then? Do you have the experience? Some of you may know that last year, Jordan Topolesky from the US was our global CEO for 1 month. So he was selected as that in September. Unfortunately, because of COVID and travel restrictions and so forth, and for the safety of everyone involved, we decided to then, with him, of course, postpone his shadowing of Alan until this year, which means that the global CEO for 1 month for 2021, this year, will be paired with Jordan to shadow Alain Dehaze. So there'll be 2 people shadowing Alain Dehaze. Fingers crossed. We are hoping that we'll be able to make that happen in September. But this will be a really interesting scenario because obviously they'll have each other to kind of lean on through some of these experiences. A lot more learning as well in that case too. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. And again, how it goes for this year is that where it's possible, where we can, but of course taking everyone's safety to account, we'd love to be in person, and we know that it makes that much more of a difference. But where it's not possible, we've also adapted it to an online scenario that is actually pretty fun as well. And we'll be talking to Jordan in a couple of weeks' time to talk about how his virtual internship as the US CEO for 1 month went, because he's got another story to tell there too. All right, so with a few minutes left to wrap up, Lisa, I'm going to give you the final word. And the question that always comes in from our audience is, what is your piece of advice to those who are applying? Because if you had to look back in hindsight, what would you say to yourself back then?
So I'm a person that always asks a lot for advice, and then at the end I get really confused by all the advice that I've got. So I'm probably not the best person to ask for advice, but looking back, I think it's something that is underestimated sometimes, but again, links to a lot of things that we've said, is really, believing in your specific qualities, right? Like finding out what is my specific quality. So self-awareness, and then believing in it, that you can make a difference because of it. So looking back, I would probably say, hey, Lisa, really deep dive a little bit more like into the assessments that we receive and the challenges, and reflect on them and be like, hey, okay, this is my specific quality. This is something that I do better than anyone else, because everyone has a little thing that they do really, really, really good, whether it's playing piano or navigating a room of people or being funny, and make that into something that is unique to yourself. I mean, I remember from the year afterwards that we had people doing specific sports, right? They were training people how to do, like, how do you say, like, jonglieren. I can't remember the English word for it. Like if you throw up those little balls and you kind of in the air, they do this. Huh?
Okay.
Dudley?
Yes, exactly. So that was kind of becoming a thing. So the CEO from the States in 2019 did that in every session, every meeting. And people became so excited about it because they had to get up and do sports. And afterwards, their brains were so much more at ease to do the work that they had to do. So it's a quality that he used to really make it a strength of like him and contribute with it. So looking back, I would say I would probably deep dive more on what that is for me during the process, and then be bold enough to take it forward, to be like, hey, okay, I actually, this is something that I can contribute with in a way maybe no one else can. And it might not be, being great in numbers, but something completely different from that, and take it then to the next level. So being like aware and then bold.
Love it. Self-aware and bold. I think that's a great note to end this on as everyone else goes into sort of thinking what they do next with this. We also wanted to hold this webinar really knowing that some of the deadlines are coming up for some of the countries involved. And I hope that this has given you a little bit of a peek into what that experience is going to be like, some advice on how to get about to it as well. And again, if you want to see more of Lisa and Ed, there's a very easy way to do it actually. If you go to our YouTube channel, you will actually be able to see the speeches they delivered at our global leadership conferences in their respective years. So we hope to see an uptick in those views after this webinar now.
And how many views does yours one have, by the way? I think your video was the most clicked video that I've ever watched on YouTube, your speech. So everyone, you have to check it out. It's really, really good.
Most clicked video. I mean, let's reduce the scope a little bit of that claim.
Oh, come on. I'm super excited now. You're Googling, so check it out.
Now we're all going to go watch Ed's video as well as Lisa's video from the GLC. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us today. Feel free to reach out to us over on LinkedIn, on our Instagram. Obviously, we'll be able to help out with any questions. Apologize if we weren't able to answer everything, but we hope we managed to touch on most of the things that are here as well. Have a lovely day. Ed, Lisa, thanks so much. Always appreciate having a chat with you guys. Take care, and we'll speak again soon, yeah?
Brilliant. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Fingers crossed for your applications.
Yeah.